Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Medicaid Moment. I'm Katherine Jacobs, estate planning and elder law attorney with Warner Norcross and Judd. And in these videos, we talk about long-term care Medicaid, the Medicaid programs that help pay for long-term care for older or disabled adults. And today we're going to talk about spend down. And so in some previous videos, I talked about how we qualify for Medicaid if we have a single applicant or a married applicant, and what assets those applicants are allowed to keep. And after keeping the assets that they're allocated under the rules, if they have too much, those excess assets, we have to spend them down. And so this is the video that talks about what are allowable spend downs. And so we're going to jump right in with the first one, but I want to preface all these spend downs by saying, when I'm working with a client, I'm looking at their situation specifically and thinking of the available spend down strategies, what is going to be in their best interest? How can I help them be the best stewards of their money? How can we craft a spend down plan that is going to provide them with the best outcomes? So not just spending down money on things willy-nilly just to get rid of assets, but spending down in a way that is going to ultimately give them the best result. So the first one that I always look at with clients is debt. If my clients have debt, then we're evaluating to see, does it make sense for us to use excess assets over the amount that they're allowed to keep to pay down debt? So certainly if I have a single client and they're going to be living in a skilled nursing facility, but they've decided that they want to keep their home, which all Medicaid applicants can keep their home. If they have a mortgage, then it is probably a very wise idea for us to pay off that mortgage if we have the funds available. And the reason is that if I have a single applicant and they're living in the nursing home, their income every month is going to go to pay the nursing home, except for $60 that they get to keep as their personal allowance. And so if all of their income is going to pay the nursing home, they're not going to have excess income every month to pay a mortgage. So that is a prime example of when we want to pay that mortgage off if possible. The same goes for credit cards. If we have clients who have credit card debt, every month we've got limited income and we've got limited resources because we're limited to what Medicaid says we can keep. And so if we've got credit card and it's racking up interest, that is a good use of our money to get rid of that debt. Next would be talking about repairs and or upgrades to a home. So if, for example, we have a Medicaid applicant who's single and they are living at home and getting Medicaid waiver or the PACE program, then certainly that is a great use of funds. Let's put a ramp in if we need a ramp to make it more accessible. Let's make the bathroom with a zero barrier shower. Let's make it wider. Let's take off doors and put up barn sliding doors to make it easier to get in and out. Maybe we're going to put in one flooring across the entire home so that it's easier to traverse if someone has a walker or a wheelchair. Maybe we need new furnace, new roof. Those are great repairs. If I have a single applicant and they are living in a nursing home and there's no intent to return home, then I'm not going to undertake those upgrades and repairs generally, because that is going to be a red flag and Medicaid may treat those repairs and upgrades as a divestment. If it's a married couple and we still have a spouse living at home and one living in the nursing home, upgrades and repairs are a great idea. Certainly it makes it a better situation for that spouse that's still living there. Those repairs or upgrades might make that longevity of the house better for them. If they can traverse more easily, they might be able to stay in the house longer too. So, every situation is different and we have to evaluate it, but it's certainly something to consider. We can take those excess assets and we can then purchase what we consider exempt assets. So we could purchase a car. Now, oftentimes I'll hear clients and they'll say, we can buy a really expensive car. And yes, you could buy a really expensive car. However, is that the best use of money to buy a really expensive asset that's going to significantly depreciate? When I'm talking about a car with clients, we're always looking at, what car do you currently have? Is it a reliable car? Is it a car that's going to last? If not, if it's unreliable, if it's on its last leg, or it's getting older, or it's hard to get in and out of, we might consider, what would be a good vehicle to replace that with that, doesn't break the bank, but helps us get something reliable. If I have a client and they're an applicant who hasn't driven in years, doesn't have a driver's license, I'm probably not going to be advising them to purchase a car because that's going to come under some significant scrutiny from the department. Okay. Other personal property items, certainly we can purchase lift chairs. We can purchase furniture that is maybe more accessible for clients. We can get clothing. So personal items for the applicant and a spouse are allowable. Next would be funeral contracts. So under Medicaid policy, if you have excess assets, you and a spouse, if you have one, can spend up to $15,870 each on a funeral contract. I find that most funeral homes are very well versed in funeral contracts, and they know the forms that they need to be on, they know the terms and conditions that need to be present in order for those funeral homes to pass the scrutiny of Medicaid and to meet the rules that Medicaid sets forth on those funeral contracts. So certainly when you're purchasing those, you should make sure that you're working with an elder law attorney and a funeral home that is understanding what those rules are. In addition to funeral contracts, you can also purchase burial spaces. So that could be an actual burial plot, it could be a crypt, it could be a mausoleum or a niche. And you can buy burial spaces not only for the applicant and the spouse, but they can also purchase them for their children, spouses of their children, their siblings, the spouses of the siblings. So there are lots of people that you could potentially purchase burial spaces for. And if that is something that is a priority for an applicant, that's certainly something that we explore. Next on our spend down list is contributing to a special needs trust. So if the applicant and or a spouse has a special needs loved one in their life, we can take excess assets and we can contribute those assets to a special needs trust solely for the benefit of that special needs individual. So if you have a special needs loved one in your life and you're contemplating Medicaid, that is something to bring up to your elder law attorney. The next is something that we call a Medicaid compliant annuity. So let's say that I've worked with a client and we've gone through sort of our spend down list and we've seen what we can spend down on responsibly and wisely and we're feeling good about, but we still have excess cash assets. That is a great opportunity for us to look at the possibility of using something called a Medicaid compliant annuity. And essentially, a Medicaid compliant annuity is taking an asset and making it into an income stream for the non-Medicaid spouse. So if I have Bob and Shirley and Bob's in the nursing home and Shirley's at home and we have $200,000 in excess assets after our spend down, we could take that $200,000 and we can put it in a Medicaid compliant annuity. That Medicaid compliant annuity is then going to turn around and start paying Shirley a monthly income from that annuity. Now, like all things in Medicaid, there are certain rules, there are certain conditions, and so you don't want to undertake purchasing a Medicaid compliant annuity unless you are working with an elder law attorney and working with a company that understands the rules. It's not your everyday garden variety annuity that a lot of financial advisors might have you set up. These are very specific Medicaid compliant annuities. And we don't do this planning unless and until you actually are applying for Medicaid. So it's not something we're doing in advance of Medicaid planning. The next would be something that we call a spousal benefits trust. And it's a lot like the annuity, but instead of setting up money in an annuity with a company that administers the annuity, we're creating a trust that the family more than likely is going to administer. And so we take those excess assets, we create a spousal benefits trust for the benefit of the Medicaid spouse. We open up an account, we put that money in, and the money from that account is going to be distributed by the trustee, who's not the spouse, someone other than the spouse. They're going to make monthly or annual payments from that trust to that Medicaid spouse. And so with both the annuity and that spousal benefits trust, if we put $200,000 in, $200,000 is going to come back out to that Medicaid spouse. And so that is a great way for us to preserve and protect those assets. And we could spend hours talking about the complexities of those and the benefits of those. So I'm giving you a really high level, just so that you are aware of them. Knowledge is power, and knowing that there are ways to take excess assets. In addition to assets, cash assets in that SBO trust, that is often a good vehicle for clients who come to me and they say, oh, in addition to these excess dollars that we have, we also have this Florida property, or we also have our cottage up north. Oftentimes I can preserve and protect that real estate by putting it in a spousal benefits trust. So that's just another tool that we have in our toolbox to help you preserve and protect assets. Now, something that I hear a lot when clients come in to talk about spend down is they'll say, well, I think I'm allowed to give $19,000 away. So how about if we do that? I'll give all of my kids $19,000. And what people are talking about when they say that is the amount that the IRS says that you can give away to individuals and not have to report. And what that really means is, the IRS says you can give away up to $19,000 annually to individuals and not have to file a gift tax return. And that type of planning is really for people who have what we call taxable estates, where they're going to die and have so much in assets that their estate is going to be taxed. For everyday people, and especially those who are looking at applying for Medicaid, we don't need to be using that tool. That doesn't help us. And if you give away $19,000, Medicaid is going to treat that as a divestment. They're going to say, you gave away $19,000. We don't care what you were doing it for, but that is a penalty. And for every $11,842 that you give away, that is a 1-month penalty. So that's almost a 2-month penalty. So if that person otherwise qualifies for Medicaid, and let's say they're in the nursing home, they're going to have to pay almost 2 months of nursing home before Medicaid is going to come in and pay. So I caution people that giving gifts and under the IRS rules is not allowable, and so don't do that. So spend down is complicated. It has a lot of rules. It's not something that you should be doing without advice of counsel. You don't want to spend down until you talk to someone first, so that you make sure that you're doing it in a way that's going to comply with Medicaid rules. Give me a call. Happy to help walk you through so that you understand fully, so that you're not giving away assets or spending down assets in a way that's going to create a penalty down the road. Thanks for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you at the next episode.